Many people worry about divorce because they think everything will be split in half. The idea of a strict 50-50 split can feel overwhelming, especially when you've worked hard to build your life and accumulate your belongings. It's natural to be concerned about what you might lose, and to wonder if you'll have to give up things that are deeply meaningful to you. People often fear losing not just their possessions, but also their sense of stability and the memories attached to their home and personal items. The thought of packing up your life and starting over can be daunting, but the truth is, property division in divorce is not always 50-50. The law recognizes that every marriage is unique, and so is every divorce. There's no automatic formula that splits everything right down the middle. Courts aim for fairness, not just a simple split. Judges look at the bigger picture, considering what is truly equitable for both people. So, breathe easy, and know that your situation will be looked at individually. There are many factors judges consider when deciding how to divide property. These can include the length of the marriage, each person's financial situation, contributions to the household, and even the needs of any children involved. It's understandable to be anxious about what happens to your belongings during a divorce. The process can feel uncertain, and it's normal to worry about your future. You've spent years building a life together, and now things are changing. The emotional weight of dividing up a shared history can be just as heavy as the legal process itself. But it's important to remember that the law understands these concerns. Lawyers and judges are experienced in helping people through these transitions, and they strive to make the process as fair and compassionate as possible. So, as I stated in my earlier short video, a driver reached out to me. He and his wife, now ex-wife of 25 years, just recently divorced. At that time, he wanted a better understanding of a no-fault divorce. And he asked, "Do you think I'm going to lose everything, or will it be a 50-50 split?" Why was this driver so worried, you may ask? Well, you see, this driver is, or I should say, was a small fleet owner. He had 6 power units and 3 trailers he owned. Due to a lack of steady freight brokers and unqualified drivers, 3 of his power units were just sitting in the yard. He still drives one, has a regional driver in another, and in the third an OTR team that runs all 48. Times are hard, he would say, and for him, it just got harder. In most places today, you don't need to blame anyone to get a divorce. The law has changed over the years to make the process less about pointing fingers and more about finding a peaceful resolution. Instead of having to prove that someone did something wrong, like cheating or being cruel, couples can now simply agree that the marriage isn't working anymore. This is a no-fault situation. It's a legal option that allows people to end their marriage without having to list specific reasons or assign blame to either party. So, what is a no-fault divorce? A no-fault divorce is a type of divorce where the spouse files for a divorce and doesn't need to prove fault. The only requirement is that the 2 parties in question have been separated for at least 6 months. The partitioner just needs to state that the marriage is irretrievably broken and/or that there is no reasonable prospect of reconciliation. Simply stated, the marriage is over and that's enough. All states recognize no-fault divorce, but some states require the consent of both spouses and/or the period of separation. But let's say if the spouse is missing or refusing to cooperate with your plans to end the marriage, like not signing the divorce papers, the judge can still move the divorce forward under certain circumstances, like having the filing spouse show good faith effort in locating the missing spouse. One way is called service by publication, which means the petitioned spouse truly can't be found and a notice is published in a local newspaper or similar outlet for a certain period of time. If the missing spouse still doesn't respond after being served through publication, the judge can grant a no-fault divorce, meaning the court proceeds without the spouse's participation. A question you may be asking, can the partitioned spouse contest the divorce? Yes, he or she can, if the spouse is known and just refuses to cooperate. The divorce then becomes contested. It then becomes a case that will proceed like a civil lawsuit. Both parties have to present evidence and arguments to a judge, who would then decide on issues of the property division, custody, and any support if needed. But I want you to remember, in most states, a spouse does not need to sign the divorce papers for the divorce to be finalized. If one party wants the divorce and meets legal requirements, the court can move forward without the other's consent. Something that sounds completely crazy to me, but it's the law of the land. So a no-fault divorce is designed to make the process of moving forward supposedly easier. It encourages couples to focus on the future rather than getting stuck in arguments about the past. This is especially important when it comes to property division. Instead of fighting over who was right or wrong, the focus shifts to dividing things in a way that's somewhat fair to both, based on the laws of the state in which you two reside. This approach helps to reduce conflict and allows both parties to focus on reaching an agreement. It can also make the process faster and less expensive, since there's less to argue about in court. It recognizes that sometimes marriages simply don't work out. We've established that a 50-50 split isn't automatic. But what does that mean in practice? It means a judge will look at your specific situation. They consider many things, not just who bought what. For example, if one spouse stayed home to raise children, they contributed to the family even without earning an income. Judges recognize this contribution is valuable and should be considered when dividing property. Remember, the goal is an equitable division of assets and debts, taking into account the unique circumstances of your marriage. So, what are these factors judges think about when deciding how to divide assets and responsibilities in a divorce? It's not just about splitting everything down the middle. Judges look at a wide range of details to make sure the outcome is as fair as possible for everyone involved. One of the first things a judge considers is the length of the marriage. A short marriage might mean fewer shared assets, while a long marriage often means lives and finances are deeply intertwined. The longer you've been together, the more likely it is that your financial lives are connected in ways that can be complicated to separate. Judges also look closely at each spouse's income and earning potential. If one person earns much more than the other, or if one spouse gave up a career to support the family, that can have a big impact. The court wants to make sure that both people can move forward with some financial security, especially if there's a big difference in what they earn. In cases where one spouse has been financially dependent, the judge may award a larger share of assets, or even spousal support, to help them adjust to life after divorce. The goal is to prevent one person from being left at a serious disadvantage. Children are another major factor. If you have kids, their needs and well-being are always at the top of the court's list. The court will always prioritize the children's well-being, considering things like stability, schooling, and emotional support. Judges want to make sure that any decisions made will help the children feel safe and secure during a difficult time. This might mean awarding the family home to the spouse, who will be the primary caregiver, so the children can stay in a familiar environment and maintain their routines. Of course, who owns what also matters. Judges look at whether assets were acquired before or during the marriage, and whether they were kept separate or shared. If one spouse brought significant assets into the marriage, like a house or investments, the judge might consider that when dividing property. Sometimes those assets remain with the original owner, but not always. It depends on how they were used during the marriage. It's important to remember that these are just some of the factors judges consider. There are many other details like health, age, and even future needs that can play a role. Every divorce is unique, and the court will carefully evaluate the specific circumstances of your situation to reach a decision that's as fair and balanced as possible for everyone involved. Divorce can be tough, and it often feels overwhelming at first, and worrying about property division is understandable, especially when so much is at stake. But remember, no-fault divorce means you're not blaming anyone for what happened. And a 50-50 split isn't the only way to divide things. There are other fair solutions. Courts aim for fairness above all else, considering what's best for everyone involved. By looking at your specific situation, like length of marriage, income, children, and who owns what, every detail matters. So don't be afraid to seek legal advice to understand your rights and options. Remember, you're not alone in this process, and the law is there to help ensure fairness during this difficult and emotional time. And drivers, this is something that's very important. I'm not an attorney. I'm not licensed to give legal advice of any kind and in any way of service. The purpose of this video is to share the experience of this driver with his permission and highlight what is a no-fault divorce. Hopefully you never find yourself placed in this position, but if you do, I hope this information will assist you in uncovering the best pathway for you and your spouse. Always consult with a licensed state attorney. Never go at a situation like this on your own. And our friend, the driver. He has the pleasure now of living and working out of his brother's basement apartment. He had to sell 3 of his power units in order to satisfy the judgment placed on him. His wife, well, she got the house, the land, 2 vehicles, and half of the proceeds from the sale of the power units.